Now I'd like to introduce our speaker, is August Lageman. I remember doing this last year. I seemed to be the speaker the first Sunday of the year. And the title of my message is Silent Night, and I'm going to give you a choice. You're going to have it in English, or my German's a little rusty. Stille Nacht. What do you want? English? Okay. About 25 years ago, when I was in the military as an Army chaplain, I became aware of an interesting piece of military history. And it was that World War I began in August of 1914 and continued for a little over 4 years. And after 5 months, it was cold, it was wintertime, and what bubbled up from the troops is they decided to have a truce. They decided to sing Christmas carols, play soccer games, do all kinds of things. So I had a memory of that event, and I was looking through National Geographic and came across this one-page article. It's an old picture. It's a bunch of British soldiers, and the guy with the cigarette and the spike is a German soldier, and he has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He didn't get the memo that smoking was hazardous to your health, but so is British machine gun fire and mustard gas and, a lot of other things. And I just want to start by reading one paragraph from the little blurb. The truce bubbled up from the ranks despite edicts against fraternization, says historian Stanley Weintraub, whose book Silent Night, that's this, tells the story. After shouted exchange promised, "You no shoot, we no shoot," pretty basic communication, some erstwhile enemies serenaded one another with carols. Like they recognized the tunes, O Tannenbaum, Silent Night. Others emerged from the trenches to shake hands and to share a smoke. Many agreed to extend the peace into Christmas Day so that they could meet again and they could bury their dead. Each side helped the other dig graves and hold memorial, and at one, a Scottish chaplain led a bilingual recitation of the 23rd Psalm. Troops shared food and gifts. I'll trade you sausage for biscuits. Traded uniform buttons as souvenirs and even completed a soccer match. So this past Christmas was the 100th anniversary of the truce, and that was the publication of Weintraub's book. How it all started, and this comes out of the book, is a week before Christmas, a German company on the front lines loved their company commander, the captain, and they wanted to have a celebration for him. And they didn't want this to be marred by people shooting people, okay? So they pushed through the barbed wire a note inviting the opposing troops for a ceasefire and to come, and they pushed with the note a seriously good German chocolate cake. Well, that apparently broke the ice. So they began to sing Christmas carols, recognized the tune. The tune, Silent Night, was originally written in German by Franz Gruber, an Austrian composer in the 1800s. And we are also familiar with other tunes like O Tannenbaum and things like that. So cakes were exchanged, Christmas carols, and so forth. And they even had a soccer match that was orchestrated by a British major. However, this got him into trouble. They were going to hang him for doing that. But the good news is George V, the King of England, got word and said, "Not while I'm King of England, you're not hanging him." So he was able to survive that. As I read the book, one of the things that was interesting is all the empires in 1914 belonged to the same family. Queen Victoria had granddaughters and grandsons. Well, one of her grandsons was George V, the King of England. Another grandson was Kaiser Wilhelm II. So it was kind of an intramural event. The book is one of those books that when you pick it up, you don't want to put it down. You want to. I think I read it in one night. In terms of it, my favorite title is Chapter 4. It says, "Our friends, the enemy." So one of the songs, and of course the title of the book, is "Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright. Run, young virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alles schafft einsam wach. Nur der Strahak, heilige Paar, holder Knabe, mit lockingem Haar, schlaf in himmlische Ruhe, schlaf in himmlische Ruhe, sleep in heavenly peace." So the book. So they were singing Christmas carols to one another, and there are some pretty poignant scenes in the book. At one point, there was a British soldier dying, and a German soldier was comforting him or doing first aid or whatever. And the British soldier reached into his wallet and got a picture of his wife and said, "I'm not going to make it. Could you please write her a letter and tell her I loved her?" Well, the German postal system wasn't connected with the British system at this point, but the soldier, out of courtesy, took the photograph from him and kept it with his belongings. And during the Christmas truce, he happened to run into a British Army chaplain and said, "Could you mail this to the..." And he said, "I'd be delighted to." And so the letter did get to the widow as intended. So there was a truce. It only happened in 1914 because the higher-ups, the generals and above, said, "We're having a serious world war, and we can't have picnics and soccer matches and all this stuff going on." So there's a scene. I'll read. There's some interesting pictures here. At the end of the truce, they were serenading one another and wishing everybody Merry Christmas and thank you and Merry Christmas to you. And then the opposing officers, the British Army's officers, went back to their side. The German officers went back to their trenches. And then from the German captain, he fired 2 shots in the air. The war had recommenced. So the Christmas truce was over. I was thinking about this when I was catching up on my movie going. Saw 2 movies over the Christmas break. The first one was the third one in Tolkien, The Hobbit, The Battle of the 5 Armies. And people who, like me, enjoy Tolkien wonder where he got all those battle scenes from. Does anybody know? He was a British Army lieutenant and survived 4 months at the Battle of the Somme, the big battle in the middle of the First World War. So he knew about... So I was sitting in the theater watching the movie, counting the armies. There were the dwarfs. There were the humans. There were the elves. And I'm going, that's 3. Where are the other 2? And I said, something was missing. And then it got real quiet. And then they said, all of a sudden, something erupted from the north. It was the orcs. They were tunneling under. The orcs were his people in Middle Earth that were the, I guess in 1914, they would be the Welsh coal miners and the German coal miners digging underneath the trenches and so forth. So that's where he got that from. So as we think about that event and celebrate the 100th anniversary, and a book has been written, people have taken notice, the question that it leaves me with is, what do we get from it? Where do we go from here? What do we learn from it? What can we bring forward from a spontaneous truce in 1914? Well, I think the first thing we can bring forth is a profound sense of hope. These soldiers went back to their roots, their church roots, their family roots, their faith roots, and what they did is kindled a sense of hope and did something that wasn't in the book. They had a truce. So the first thing that we can get from this event is we begin the year 2015 with a sense of hope. And our job is to keep hope alive. Then the second thing is, what kind of a year are we trying to shape? Another book by Pierre Franck is The DNA Field and the Law of Resonance, subtitled Creating Reality Through Conscious Thought. And he goes through how we shape and create with our minds the world in which we live. A quote from it comes from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was also a Stoic philosopher as well as the emperor. And Marcus says, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." Think about that for a moment. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. We can't control all the events, but we can move forward with a positive sense of hope. Have you ever looked in the mirror when you brush your teeth and shave, so forth, and had this thought come to mind? I am wonderful and unique. Try it tomorrow morning. See what happens. I am wonderful and unique. Reminds me of a Buddhist priest who got up one morning, looked in the mirror, and said, "I don't know who you are, but I'm going to brush your teeth anyway." So there's a story in the book that really pertains to shaping our own reality. And this is the author, and he writes about himself when he was just a teenager. When I was 17 years old, I had shoulder-length blonde hair. This was my pride and joy, the expression of my youthful revolutionary spirit. It was the time of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Anybody remember them? The time of Woodstock, Jimi Hendrix and the Doors. There were the Byrds, the Mama and the Papas and the Beach Boys. Have I got to your group yet? And me. I was one of the few in my age group that was allowed by his parents to have such long hair. For this, I was envied and admired. I played guitar, had a band, and was immersed in the freedom of the flower power movement. And then came a catastrophe. My hair began to fall out. It was the beginning of becoming completely bald, which I not only saw as terrible, it seems to me that ludicrous. As one of the pioneers of the hippie movement of my crowd, I was shocked, heartbroken, and devastated. I secretly searched for solutions in different hair studios around Munich, he's German, and no one knew the reason for my sudden hair loss. One person even suggested I try a costly hair transplant. In Munich, there was one hair clinic which I had been examined several times. Every time they find that I had the early signs of becoming bald. The doctor found this to be completely normal. However, at my age, it was a bit early. There were nights of tears and despair. I simply could not and would not accept the symbol of my freedom and youth being lost. But nothing could be done to change it. Then the following happened. to earn some money in order to take some psychology courses, which otherwise would have been unaffordable, I helped the organizers of a conference. There I was able to observe the presenters of psychologist Max Lusher, known for his work in color perception, and ethnologist Konrad Lorenz, and author Eric von Däniken, and others. In this way, I got to know a shaman who noticed that day that I had little enthusiasm for the task at hand. No wonder I was depressed. Not once had my mother, who constantly comforted me about much discussed events, helped me with these difficult worries. The shaman asked me what weighed on me so heavily. I showed him a round circle in the middle of my head. This guy up here. I got one now. What remained of my shoulder-length blonde hair. The shaman looked at me with large, surprised eyes. He still could not realize what my problem was. Here, I cried with tears in my eyes, pointing to the bald spot on the top of my head. The shaman only laughed and said, "Why don't you talk to your hair?" I find the very idea of talking to my hair ridiculous and no longer felt like helping this man prepare his next book. The next day, he approached me and asked me if I talked to my hair. I felt indignant at this foolish suggestion. But then I noticed that he wasn't making fun of me. He really meant what he said. He nodded and said, "You speak with many people, and I have observed you. You can speak very well with others. Why don't you talk to yourself? Why do you believe the doctors or specialists more than yourself? No one has greater influence on ourselves than we ourselves. I would never give someone else the responsibility for my own body. I would always want to hold that in my own hands." Boom. "But that is your decision, of course." He smiled and went back to his work. That night I began to talk to my hair. Although I find it laughable at first, I told it where it should grow, and I imagined that this bald spot would close up. At least this gave me some courage. The next day, at the shaman's departure, he saw me and recognized the distinct confidence in my eyes. "Good, so you have begun." "Yes," I said, and it was no longer laughable. "Good," he said, "but think about it. This is the beginning of a journey. It's only your hair. And do not forget, it's just dead tissue. Imagine what you could do with live tissue." From then on, I talked to my hair every night and morning, and suddenly 1 week later, I saw the fuzz appeared on my bald spot. 14 days later, there was serious hair growth. In a month, I looked funny because the bald spot was overgrown with new hair. But the new hair was still short that it looked like a short shrift on the top of my head while the shoulder-length hair was around it. He looked, I guess, kind of funny. A half year later, the haunting episode of my life was all but forgotten. And today, 55 years later, I still have a thick, full head of hair. For me, this is no longer surprising, although I now see what happened in a completely different light. Then I believed that the shaman had helped me with a little bit of his magic. Today, I know that he only taught me to believe in my own magical powers. Although I no longer know your name today, dear shaman, thank you for your wonderful help. Who knows how my life would have been played out had you not come along. And although I forgot this incident for quite a while, I have since developed the habit of communicating every day with my body. So what I hope we can go into the year 2015, since it's already started and we're only 4 days into it, is a sense of hope and a positive outcome that we can really do much to shape. We can't control everything in our life. We can't control all the variables. That's one of my complaints, by the way. You can't control all the variables, but you can shape them in terms of it. And I'd like to end with another quote, and this is a quote that I've been bumping into for years, and it's from the writer and author Marianne Williamson. And she says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We are all meant to shine as children do. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I'd like to send you off into the new year with this thought. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. Let your light shine in 2015.